He gave her money for the bus, without knowing she was a very rich company leader who would deeply fall in love with him. The first drop of rain hit the ground exactly as Olivia Hayes let out a frustrated breath. Could this day get any worse? For her? She opened her bag for what seemed like the 100th time, searching through it with growing panic. Lipstick, a set of keys, a business card, no wallet. Her phone was dead. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying hard to calm herself down. Olivia was proud of being in charge of her business, of her personal life, of everything. But today, fate had decided to test how patient she was. She had just finished an important investor meeting earlier in the day, and somewhere between getting into and out of the taxi, her wallet had gone missing. No credit cards, no cash. Now she was stuck at a bus stop far from home with no way to pay her bus fare. And of course it had to start raining. She looked up at the sky, annoyed. Really, a few feet away, Aiden Carter shifted his weight, quietly watching the woman struggle. She didn't fit in here, not in that fancy designer coat, not with those sharp, self-assured features that looked totally out of place at a dirty bus stop, in the middle of the city. Aiden had spent enough time in this city to easily spot wealth when he saw it. What's a woman like her doing in a situation like this? He wondered to himself. He saw how she let out a sharp breath, her fingers tightening, around her bag strap, how her shoulders squared as if ready for a fight. Clearly, she wasn't the type to ask for help from anyone. And yet, need a hand? Olivia turned her head, surprised by the deep, friendly voice next to her. A man stood there, tall, thin, wearing old jeans and a plain black hoodie. His brown hair was a little messy, his blue eyes calm and watchful. There was nothing really special about him, except for the kindness in his look. Olivia paused. She cleared her throat. I lost my wallet, you see. Aiden nodded as if he had already known. That. Do you have any friends nearby who can lend you some money? She set aside her pride and admitted, My phone's battery is completely dead. Aiden gave a soft chuckle. Having a tough day? Olivia huffed. You have no idea at all. For a quick second, Aiden thought about his choices. He had exactly 44 7.5s in his pocket, just enough for one more bus ride home after his long work shift. But this woman, a stranger he just met, needed it more than he did at that moment. Without saying another word, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a few wrinkled bills and some coins, and held them out to her. Here you go, he said simply, for your bus fare. Olivia blinked. She looked at the money, then back at him. She hesitated. People didn't just do things like this. Not in her world, not to her. She studied him carefully, looking for any sign of a hidden reason, but there was none. Just honest truthfulness. Finally, Olivia let out a small breath and took the money. Thank you so much. Aiden just shrugged his shoulders. It's only a few dollars. But to Olivia, it was much more than just that. Let me pay you back, please, she offered, already making a mental note to find him later. Aiden chuckled again, shaking his head. Don't worry about it at all. Just help someone else someday. That made her stop and think. He wasn't looking for anything and returned from her. For some reason, that made her heart feel a bit tight. Before she could say anything else, the bus pulled up to the stop. Olivia paused for half a second, then stepped onto the bus. She turned back as the doors closed with a hiss. Through the rain-covered glass, she saw Aiden still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching the bus drive away. He had no clue at all. No idea that he had just given money to a woman who could have bought the entire bus company if she wanted to. And for the first time in a very long time, Olivia felt something unexpected. She felt small and unimportant, and for some strange reason she didn't mind feeling that way. Olivia Hayes was not used to thinking about people she barely knew after just one meeting. Her life was fast-paced, carefully planned, and organized down to the smallest detail. There was no room for anything that could distract her. And yet, as she sat in her fancy top-floor office the next morning, looking over business plans, her mind kept going back to the man from the bus stop, Aiden. There was something special about him, something truly real. She had met countless men in expensive suits, men who carefully chose every word, who never spoke unless they had something to gain. But Aiden, he had given away his last few dollars without thinking twice, not because he expected anything back, not because he knew who she was, but simply because he was kind. She sighed, shaking her head slowly. Why was she even thinking about this simple event? Her thoughts were suddenly stopped by the sound of the intercom. "Miss Hayes," her assistant's voice came through. "The department heads are waiting for you in the conference room right now," Olivia breathed out, smoothing down her business jacket. "Time to focus on work." The conference room was filled with the usual loud energy of a company. Exie whispered, among themselves, the smell of fresh coffee hanging in the air. Olivia stepped in, her presence immediately getting everyone's attention. Conversations quieted. Heads turned to look at her. She took her seat at the head of the long, smooth table, nodding at the group of department heads who were gathered there. But then something caught her eye. A familiar person standing at the far end of the room near the maintenance control panel. A man in dark blue work clothes was casually adjusting a toolbox on the floor. Olivia's breath stopped in her throat. Aiden. For a moment, she thought she was just imagining him. But then he looked up. Their eyes met briefly, and nothing happened. No sign of him knowing her, no shock, no realization that the woman he had helped last night was now sitting at the head of the table. Aiden simply gave a polite nod of his head, then went back to his work as if she were just another important boss in a building full of them. Olivia, on the other hand, felt like she couldn't breathe. For the rest of the meeting, Olivia was only partly paying attention. She went through the motions, listened to various reports, approved different plans, but in the back of her mind she kept replaying that one moment. Aiden worked here in her very own company. What were the chances of that happening? After the meeting ended, Olivia stayed for a moment, watching as Aiden put away his tools and got ready to leave. She wasn't sure why, but something inside her didn't want this to be the last time she saw him for good. "Excuse me," she called out, keeping her voice steady and calm. Aiden paused, looking up. "Yes, ma'am." Olivia almost laughed out loud. If only he truly knew. She stood up straight. "What is your name?" Aiden hesitated for a second before answering. "Aiden Carter." Olivia nodded her head, as if hearing it for the very first time. "How long have you worked here at this company?" "About a year now," he said, holding his toolbox tighter. "I'm part of the maintenance team." He seemed careful, like he wasn't used to high-level bosses paying attention to people like him. "Good," she said simply, with no further explanation. "I'll see you around, Aiden." Then she turned and walked out before she could think too much about it, but as she walked down the hallway, she couldn't stop the tiny smile that played on the corner of her lips. A week later, Olivia found herself, without thinking, looking for Aiden whenever she walked through the building. She saw him now and then fixing a light above, checking an air conditioning unit. But he never once looked at her the way she looked, at him, because to him, she was just another important executive. Then one evening, as she was checking her emails, something caught her eye. A complaint. Employee Aiden Carter. Issue said to be disrespectful to a boss. Olivia frowned deeply, clicking into the report to read more. According to the paper, Aiden had argued with his supervisor, Mark Grayson, about unsafe working conditions in the building. Her fingers curled slightly on the mouse. Of course, she thought. She could already imagine it clearly. Aiden standing, his ground firmly, refusing to give up because he truly cared about doing things right. She scrolled down the page, suggested action, suspension from work. Olivia's jaw tightened in anger. This was not going to happen on her watch. Within a few minutes, she quickly wrote an email to the HR department from CEO Olivia Hayes. Subject: Aiden Carter's work review. I would like to personally look over the complaint regarding Aiden Carter before any action is taken against him. Until then, no disciplinary steps should be put into place, Olivia Hayes. She pressed the send button immediately. Aiden would never know about this, but that didn't matter to her because Olivia was not going to let a good man like him be punished for simply doing the right thing. For the first time in a long while, Olivia found herself looking forward to small, seemingly unimportant moments in her day. Not high-stakes meetings, not important talks with other companies, not pitching ideas to investors, but random meetings with Aiden Carter. It began slowly. She started taking the longer path to her office just so she could walk past the areas where the maintenance team worked. She sometimes needed help with things she could have easily fixed herself, like adjusting the temperature in her office or fixing a flickering the next day. Olivia stopped looking for Aiden, stopped trying to change his mind about things. She let him go freely, even if it completely broke her heart into pieces. Aiden Carter had believed that walking away from Olivia Hayes was the right decision to make. He had convinced himself that their worlds were too different, that a relationship between them would never work out, that she deserved someone who could stand proudly beside her as an equal partner. But the moment she stopped trying, the moment she actually left him for good, everything suddenly felt wrong and incomplete. At first, he convinced himself it was just a period of adjustment, but the days slowly turned into weeks, and the empty feeling never went away. Every morning he walked into work and strongly felt her absence. No more unexpected chance meetings, no more clever remarks, no more Olivia at all. And that was when it finally hit him hard. She had never been the problem in their relationship. He was the one who was truly wrong. Aiden had spent so much time thinking that Olivia saw him as less important that he never once realized she never actually did. She had never pied him, never looked down on him, never treated him as anything less than her equal. He had been the one who built the tall walls between them. He had been the one who refused to believe she could genuinely love him for who he was deep down inside. He had been the one who pushed her away from him, and now she was completely gone from his life. And it was all his fault. One afternoon, Aiden was walking toward the building's exit when he saw her. Olivia, standing near the entrance, deeply involved in a conversation with a man in an expensive suit. The guy was tall, well-groomed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that clearly screamed money and power. Aiden froze in his tracks. Something inside him twisted painfully as he watched them together. Olivia laughed at something the guy said. Her face relaxed, her smile easy and natural, and in that very moment, Aiden realized she had moved on with her life. His chest tightened painfully. Had he really expected her to wait around for him to change his mind? Had he thought that just because he couldn't stop thinking about her, she was doing the exact same thing? She was Olivia Hayes, a woman who could have anyone she desired. And clearly she had found someone much better for her. Aiden turned around quickly and walked away before she could see him. But no matter how much distance he put between them, the deep pain followed him relentlessly. Aiden threw himself into his work, desperately hoping it would be a good distraction from his feelings. It wasn't enough. He went out with his friends, tried to meet new people in different places. None of them were anything like Olivia. Everywhere he went, he saw things that reminded him of her. The quiet cafe where they had once sat, pretending it was just a work discussion. The vending machine he had been fixing when he first truly realized who she really was. Even the very bus stop where they had first met each other. And finally, Aiden couldn't take the pain anymore. He desperately needed to fix this situation. He needed to tell Olivia the whole truth before it was too late to do anything. It was the night of Hayes Corporation's yearly gala, a very large and fancy event. Hundreds of employees, investors, and important guests gathered in an elegant ballroom filled with lights. And Aiden had absolutely no business being there at all. Yet here he was, standing in the large crowd, looking around the room, his heart pounding loudly in his chest. Then he saw her clearly. Olivia stood near the stage dressed in a beautiful black gown, appearing effortlessly poised as she spoke with a group of top executives. She was truly breathtaking to behold. And for the first time since he had met her, Aiden wasn't afraid anymore. Taking a deep breath of courage, he stepped forward into the crowd. People around him started to notice his presence, whispers spreading through the large crowd. A maintenance worker crashing a CEO's fancy event. That was simply unheard of and shocking. But Aiden didn't care what anyone else thought. He walked directly up to Olivia, stopping right in front of her. She blinked in surprise, startled by his sudden appearance. Aiden. For a moment, neither of them spoke a single word. Then, before he could lose his courage, Aiden said firmly, "I was wrong about everything." The entire room went completely silent. Olivia stared at him, completely caught off guard and confused. "What did you say?" Aiden breathed out sharply, his voice firm but filled with raw emotion. "I was wrong. Wrong to walk away from you. Wrong to think you deserved someone else better than me. Wrong to believe that what we have together doesn't truly matter." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Aiden took another step closer to her. "I don't care about our differences," he stated clearly. "I don't care about the money, the company, or what anyone else in this room thinks about us." His blue eyes were locked onto hers, steady and unwavering. "The only thing I truly care about in this world is you, Olivia." Silence hung in the air. Then a slow, wonderfully beautiful smile spread across Olivia's lips. And just like that, the strong walls between them finally came crashing down completely. For the first time in weeks, Olivia Hayes felt something she thought she had permanently lost: hope. Standing in front of Aiden, hearing his powerful words, seeing the raw determination shining in his eyes, it was almost enough to make her believe, again, in them. Almost. Because as much as she wanted to fall into his arms immediately to tell him she had been waiting for this exact moment for so long, she couldn't ignore the fear that still lingered in the back of her mind. What if he regretted this decision later on? What if months from now he felt resentful towards her? What if this was just a sudden impulse, a grand gesture fueled only by strong emotions in the moment? She needed to be absolutely sure. She needed to know that he wouldn't walk away from her again ever. Olivia took a slow, steady breath, calming herself down. "Aiden," she began, her voice much softer than usual. He stepped closer, waiting eagerly, hoping for her answer. She met his gaze directly. "If you really mean all of this? If you truly want to be with me forever?" She hesitated for a moment, then added, "Then prove it to me." Aiden's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Prove what exactly?" Olivia nodded her head. "You walked away before, because you felt like you weren't good enough, that you needed to stand firmly on your own 2 feet before we could truly be together as a couple." He swallowed hard, remembering the exact words he had once spoken to her. She continued, "So if you genuinely believe in us, then show me that belief. Show me that you're willing to fight for this relationship, not just with empty words, but with real actions that truly matter." Aiden stared at her for a brief moment, then nodded his head, understanding completely. He didn't argue with her request. He didn't ask for any easy shortcuts. He simply said with conviction, "I will do it." True to his promise, Aiden didn't wait around. Didn't waste any precious time. The very next day, he took the first big step, enrolling in online business courses to learn more. He worked tirelessly, balancing his full-time job with studying, late into the night, often until the early hours. At first, it felt overwhelming and too much to handle. But every single time he thought about quitting and giving up, he reminded himself why he was doing all of this hard work for himself, for Olivia, and for their potential future together. And without him knowing, Olivia was quietly watching his progress. Though they weren't officially a couple yet, Olivia never stopped caring deeply about him. She subtly used some connections she had. Nothing too obvious or direct, nothing that would ever hurt his pride. A recommendation here, a small scholarship there, little things that gave him opportunities he wouldn't have had on his own before. But mostly she just waited patiently. Waited to see if he would truly commit to his goal. Waited to see if this time Aiden wouldn't run away again. Throughout the months that followed, Aiden and Olivia stayed in touch regularly, sending texts to each other, having occasional coffee meetups, and engaging in deep, late-night conversations. There were no official labels on their relationship, no grand declarations of love, just two people quietly waiting for the right moment to come. And as time passed slowly, Olivia began to truly realize that Aiden wasn't just proving himself to her. He was proving himself to himself, becoming a better person. And that was when she finally knew. Maybe they still had a real chance to be together. The past year had been one of the hardest and most rewarding years of Aiden Carter's life so far. He had worked tirelessly without rest, balancing his demanding job while studying late into the night, pushing himself beyond limits he never thought he could possibly reach. And now, standing proudly in his own small but growing tech maintenance company, he knew every single sacrifice he had made had been absolutely worth it in the end. His business wasn't huge and famous, not yet, but it was entirely his own. Built from the very bottom up with his own hands and hard work on his own terms and rules. He was no longer just a maintenance worker employed in someone else's company. He was his own boss, completely in charge. And most importantly, he was finally ready to go after what his heart had always deeply desired, ready to fight wholeheartedly for Olivia. Aiden sat at his desk, staring intently at the small envelope in his hands. Inside was a simple bus ticket, the exact same kind of ticket he had once given Olivia all those months ago when she had been stranded without any money, lost in the pouring rain. Only this time, the bus ticket wasn't for her to get home. It was for her to come back to him, to his life. He took a deep breath, then quickly scribbled a heartfelt note on a small card before gently slipping it into the envelope. "I've changed. A lot, but one thing has never changed at all. I still love you, Olivia." And with that, he sent it off to her. When Olivia Hayes received the small envelope, she nearly dropped it in surprise. Her fingers trembled noticeably as she carefully pulled out the bus ticket and the handwritten note. Her breath caught in her throat. For a long moment, she just stared at the simple words on the card, letting them sink in. And then, before she could second-guess herself or change her mind, she quickly grabbed her coat and ran out of her office. The city was bustling with activity as Olivia sprinted down the familiar streets, her heart pounding loudly in her ears. When she finally reached the bus stop, she saw him standing there, hands casually in his pockets, looking exactly the same as she remembered, yet somehow completely different and more mature. He had truly grown as a person. He had become the man he always wanted to be in his life. But when he smiled at her, that same infuriating, familiar, heart-stopping smile that she remembered, she knew he was still her Aiden. Deep down. Still. The kind man who had given her a few dollars for a bus fare, never knowing she was a millionaire. Still the man who had challenged her way of thinking, frustrated her sometimes, and ultimately made her fall hopelessly and deeply in love with him. She didn't stop running towards him. She didn't hesitate for a second. She threw herself into his waiting arms with full force. Aiden caught her easily, holding her so tightly, it felt like he was never going to let her go again, ever. And this time, he truly wouldn't. As they stood there, wrapped closely in each other's arms, the city continued to move around them as usual. Cars honked loudly, people rushed past them on the sidewalk. The world didn't stop for their moment. But for them, this was the only moment that truly mattered in their lives. Olivia pulled back slightly, looking up at him, her eyes shining brightly with emotion. "You took long enough to come back," she teased him playfully. Aiden chuckled softly. "Told you I don't give up easily on things," she smiled warmly. "Good, because neither do I. Not anymore." And then, with the whole world bustling loudly around them, she kissed him deeply, sealing the promise they both already knew in their hearts was true. This time, there were no more difficult obstacles, no more nagging doubts, no more emotional distance between them. Just Olivia and Aiden, together forever. Finally. Sometimes, true love isn't about where you come from in life or what material possessions you have accumulated. It's about who you truly are inside and who you choose to fight for with all your heart. Aiden and Olivia came from two very different worlds, but in the end, their hearts spoke the same exact language of love. Because real love doesn't care about social status, wealth, or difficult obstacles. It just always finds a way to make things